There's still many things I have yet to accomplish in this life. I'm just a youngster who has only recently turned 70. As long as my body holds out, I want to enjoy killing time because I'm only 70 years old. LOL. I didn't see you there.
It all started early this morning.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot, UFOs,
Cryptids, true crime, paranormal, and more.
I've always wanted to see a UFO.
Oh, I was researching for your entertainment.
That's Bigfoot scat.
He basically wrote the book on miracle.
We aren't really comedians.
What if Buddha did cocaine?
The Addams Family on meth. This is the Black Cat Report.
See you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 105, season 3 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and joining me here tomorrow, my best friend since before the beginning of the past, Joey.
Hello. I've also been here since yesterday. So, do with that what you will.
Deal.
Uh-huh.
Well, we've got a lot of updates and news that, for once, I actually remembered to type out. So we should be able to run through them pretty fast. Our Patreon is almost up and should be live by Friday morning. So if you want to join up and help support this show, be on the lookout for a special announcement delivered to your ears via whatever platform you're listening to this episode on right now. And for everyone who tuned in, called in, and submitted your theories for last Saturday's conspiracy-themed live stream of beer, booze, and boogeymen, thank you.
Thank you.
According to this letter I received from my lawyer, we single-handedly delayed the New World Order's plans by over an hour. And
Barely.
Also, I see it. There's an addition here. Also, we managed to help a minimum wage intern at the NSA get just enough overtime to afford rent this month. And all of that on the 4th of July weekend. There's nothing more patriotic than that, folks.
And that's what we always do. We're always there to help the intern, especially at the NSA.
Especially.
They need their interns.
Honestly, they know me better than I do myself, so.
You and Google.
Ugh. Well, while all the listeners gave some, one listener gave all. One brave listener from our very own hometown of BCR heard the call to arms, and without hesitation, this listener, through all the smoke of fireworks and rivers of beer, single-handedly led the charge card towards our dreams. And that man's social handle is Harry Carey. So Harry, we thank you.
Thank you.
You, my friend, will be getting full access to all the perks, merch, and mayhem we're offering to our freshly announced campaign for Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen. For anyone that hasn't heard about this yet, here's the quick rundown. The whole B3 crew, Damien, Kristen, Joey, and myself, have been hard at work pulling strings behind the scenes in order to take a trip this September 28th to where we've gained early access to investigate and spend the night in one of the most notoriously haunted homes in one of Kentucky's most notoriously paranormal towns, Hopkinsville, the birthplace of Edgar Cayce and the location of the very famous Hopkinsville Goblins incident, just to name a few. Now, this house, while a well-known hotspot for local residents, is nearly unheard of in the paranormal community so far. And with that said, only a handful of outside investigators have ever gone in, with one left so taken back by what happened to them that they bought the damn house and will soon be opening up for paranormal tourists to reserve a room for the night. But right now, we have an opportunity to gain early, exclusive access to the entire property, and we're bringing you with us. You see, we designed this campaign to offer you something that might be a first in the paranormal community. On the night of the investigation, donors will be guiding, deciding, and directing the investigation in real time. From what dark room Joey gets voted to be blindfolded and sit in alone while he's doing the Estes method, to what questions are being asked and the room we're focusing on. Or, if you decide, you could even have me sleep in the basement all night. It's your call. Yeah, you don't have to. But the only way that we can get you that kind of access is if we can get access. So all of our tiers are designed to bring you closer to the investigation, the closer you bring us to the investigation. And while everyone who donates will get access to a private live stream with community chat and a multicam view of the entire investigation, most of the major rooms in the house, the only way I won't be bitter about being alone, sleeping in the damp, dark basement of a haunted house, just listening to the spiders crawl along the creaking pipes all night long, just lying there, thinking about how you're sitting in the comfort of your own home, probably like eating ice cream in bed while getting all the benefits of an investigation with none of the dust or the downsides at all, is if folks who really, really went above and beyond were the ones who asked me to do it. They're the ones who made the nightmare possible, and for that, I gotta thank them for even letting it happen. So if going on an investigation is your thing, or maybe you just want revenge for the Flat Earth episode, or you want to direct your own Scooby-Doo themed Sims movie, then go to ghost.beer/support to learn more, or just click the link at the top of today's show notes. And as a side note, when we launch the BCR Patreon this Friday morning, our patrons will be gaining access to all the discovery and the debauchery as well. We'll be working out the whole tier system trade-off with that.
Yep.
But enough about all that, Joey. I don't know why you keep going on. Let's get into this dang show.
I don't know either.
Now, as some of you may know, this month is dedicated to time travel, and there are two reasons why it's being released just a little bit late. The main reason is because I couldn't figure out how to read the assembly manual for the IKEA time machine I bought. And the other reason is, oh my God, if every single episode of Black Cat Report was somehow smushed together and made into a physical person, the result would literally be the person we're covering today, minus serial killers in the post office. Now, by the end of this two-part series, we'll have touched on dinosaurs, Venus, Bill Gates, the Akashic Records, government cover-ups, ghosts, teleportation, giants, soul assimilation, ancient water, UFOs, near-death experiences, doomsday, 5D reality, Earth before the moon, Jesus, the multiverse, Atlantis, AI, out-of-body experiences, the Vatican, a weight loss secret you should not try at home, the birth of the human race, the creation of the universe, Noah's Ark, Earth after the moon, aliens, possession, multi-stage death, the meaning of life during, after, and before, and last but not least, the very topic this episode was supposed to just be about when I picked him, time travel.
Dun da da da.
But to get there and come back so we can go on about that later, then right now we'll have to organize the events of a time traveler's life into a coherent story, which, as I discovered over the weekend, is only slightly easier than building your own IKEA time machine. It's a timeless problem, but I think I may have discovered a solution.
Tell me.
By mirroring the effects of time travel with how I wrote these episodes. While it doesn't make any sense right now, probably, when we come back later, it will. So, Joey, are you ready? You ready?
I'm ready.
Now, like I said up top, the focus of this series will be on one incredibly fascinating man who almost every time I thought for certain he was full of BS, I would find either direct proof he wasn't or recent scientific breakthroughs that were backing up his decades-old claims. Now, as for the verification I found, it'll be listed down in the show notes, along with links to his interviews that I translated to build these episodes around. As for the man, it's required no less than 5 disclaimers before an introduction. His name is Tsuruhiko Kiuchi, who, on June 4th of this year, 2024, wrote the blog post I quoted earlier about turning 70. And over his long life, some of his achievements have included things like directly influencing a current plan by world governments to use nuclear bombs, authoring multiple bestsellers about life, inventing a machine that turns toxic waste, pollution, and chemical weapons into highly pure and highly valuable carbon, hydrogen, and naphtha, all without anyone needing to power it, as well as inspiring the plot behind 2 major Hollywood movies, one of which I can almost guarantee you've seen. And while all of that is true, I've checked it, got references, it'll be in the show notes. Kiuchi is not a scientist or a policy expert or even a politician. He's pretty much just an average dude who maybe sometimes is an occasional time traveler.
Maybe. Just a little bit.
Yeah, my skepticism's getting pushed to the side, but born in 1954 in Kumitown, Japan, Kiuchi grew up spending his summers swimming and playing with his older sisters and brother in the rivers that flow along the feet of the region's rural mountains. By 5th grade, he was always waiting at the door to the astronomy club the moment the last bell rang. And for the most part, his childhood was average, and honestly, his home life seemed healthy. Typical person, right? Well, his home life was healthy. I don't know if that's typical, but you know, and for the sake of the story.
For our episodes, it's very healthy.
By the time he reached his early 20s, he had enlisted in Japan's Air Self-Defense Force with the hopes of being a jet pilot. And in no time, he became a flight dispatcher at the Hiraku Air Base. In total, the entire department, this is so sad, the entire department he was assigned to only had 6 people on staff who were forced to keep the tower operating 24/7 with a minimum of 2 people on each shift.
So that's 3 shifts. If you're taking 12-hour shifts, you have 1 12-hour shift off, right? Well, I guess they're splitting.
It was fucked.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So, like it would for anyone, the lack of staffing, demanding schedule, and the constant stress of knowing any slight mistake he makes maybe kills an entire plane full of people.
Yeah. Ugh.
That's kind of like traffic control is like one of those jobs where it's, especially back then, bro.
You need to be
like,
on it.
We're talking in 1976.
You have to be on it all times, all day. You cannot let it down. If you do, people die.
If your binoculars are foggy,
Yeah.
some fucked up shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, your radar gets a tiny bit behind.
I thought that was radar. Turned out it was Pong. Oh no. 9/11.
I should stop playing games while I'm at work.
Like I said, naturally started to get to Kiuchi, who, for 2 years, was living in a constant state of exhaustion before finally, in 1976, when he was 22 years old, he collapsed to the floor.
That's never good.
With an overwhelming pain in his abdomen. Shit caught up to him.
Yeah, that's never good.
No. Dude's 22 years old.
Yeah. And to be fair, like we talk about the culture in Japan now, it's same. People are killing themselves and just because they worked way, way too hard. We think in the United States we work hard. No, we do not work hard compared to their culture and the lifestyle they lead.
No. People that come to the United States works hard.
Yes, correct.
We have the American dream, but then there's actually the American secret, right? So like you're only dreaming if you're asleep, but during the day, you're managing.
Yeah.
And for all those folks coming over here to dream, woo, well, your kids will know. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, isn't that what it's all for?
So, overwhelming pain in his abdomen. His stomach was squeezing and pulling itself like the feeling of cramps if they were being tied into a knot inside of you.
Ooh.
As if that wasn't enough, the blood drained out of his head and the world went black. He was still conscious.
Oh.
And the only thing on his body that blacked out was his fucking eyes. So now he's blind, freaking the fuck out, in severe agony with his stomach just learning to breakdance or something.
Yeah, poor guy.
So while he's blind and in pain, he was struggling to yell for help, but was barely able to make a gasp because he was in such severe fucking pain.
Uh-huh.
But luckily, one of the 2 staff members who were on shift happened to be walking by. I'm assuming he must have passed out next to the bathroom and they just finally, after 9 hours, got to go pee or something.
Yeah.
But they were randomly walking by the area and they saw him collapsed and they immediately were like, oh, fucking shit, and like ran up to him and rushed him, right, to the nearest hospital. An obstetrician's hospital. a baby hospital.
Yeah. I guess that's the closest one.
Totally. I'm not going to blame them for that, but in hindsight.
Yeah. I bet they were really confused when they brought in his equipment for work just so he could work while he's in the bed. Well, you still got 6 more hours on your shift, so...
Hey, buddy. Hope you don't mind if I move this. It's like, beep, beep. And they just unplug the fucking pulse and respiratory machine and move it out of the way. And they're just like, I just need this outlet for a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Hey, going to the beach this weekend. I really appreciate you doing this for me. You take care, bud.
I took my PTO for this week, so sorry.
Like I said, he got rushed to an obstetrician's hospital. Closest option, I understand. Well, after a few x-rays, the doctor, who didn't even have the right equipment needed to figure out what was going on, told Kiuchi, I couldn't even possibly tell you what the hell's going on, and then handed him some meds and sent him home for the rest of the night.
He basically said, you're fucked up. You're fucked up. Good luck.
Well, spoiler. The pain didn't quit. And as the hours passed deeper into the night, Kiuchi quickly descended into one of the most horrifying experiences I have ever heard of. I'm not going to lie, and this sounds like an exaggeration. This shit makes dying of the bubonic plague sound like a wet dream. This is bad.
Yeah.
This is fucking bad, dude. Well, while he was alone in his home, he began having coughing fits, each time more intense until they became uncontrollable. And that caused him to start gagging over and over.
That's the worst thing.
And over again. You got to just picture this as like a train that was stopped that's just slowly fucking picking up speed. This shit just starts accelerating and compounding, right?
Yeah.
So at first, it was everything or anything that he had eaten a few hours earlier, right? Then it was stomach acid, which he soon started choking on because it was coming up between his gasps for air between coughing and throwing up. It was like, so the acid's now flipping back and going into the top of his lungs. So he's fighting for air. He's throwing up. He's coughing hard enough and frequently enough that he's literally throwing up.
Yeah, it's not good.
And then the vomiting sped up until eventually his stomach acid was replaced with bile. Yeah. So that started coming up, which all this is burning his esophagus. Not going to make the coughing any better.
Nope.
Right? Everything is fucking accelerating.
Yep.
And then finally, globs of dark blood. And while all of that was going on, there was a symphony playing in the background, backing it up from the place that things usually just go out. Only the place where things just go out was twice as worse, but mostly in reverse. From shit to bile to anything else that could have been there to diarrhea made of blood only, just straight up shitting streams of blood. He's in bed, just wallowing in fucking pain while all of these body fluids are just spreading around him.
Yeah.
That's
so disgusting. And poor guy.
Can you just picture like a view of if you were like a fly on the ceiling looking down at this, like it was that scene from Trainspotting, only actually real and way the fuck worse? This is going on for hours.
That poor guy.
So there's blood coming out of his mouth.
His butt.
And there's blood literally squirting out of his ass. And at the same time, he was pissing himself. But honestly, that was like the least of his concerns.
That's probably help. That's probably the one thing he's like, yes, thank God.
The point is, every hole that could possibly have shit coming out of it, specifically liquids coming out of it, it was coming out of it like a fucking fire hose, right?
Yeah.
And this continued on for hours until... Oh, this is bad. Until rolling in the bed became too painful as his nerves were starting to press against his bones. Between when he went to the doctor, right, the first time.
Yeah. The baby doctor.
And then the hospital he's about to be rushed to. Tsuruhiko Kiuchi was recorded to have lost 88 pounds. That's how much fucking liquid came out of his body that night. In 12 hours, he lost 88 Like, the fat from his fucking body.
All gone.
Everything was coming the fuck out of him.
Yeah. Ugh.
And this is recorded.
That's
This is the shit that when I was
ridiculous,
reading
yeah.
his story, I was like, this is a fucking bullshit. No, it's real. This is some of the most insane shit we're going to be covering is real.
I would imagine that he probably, if I can guess the idea, he's probably about like 150 pounds, 150 pounds.
Let's see, 22-year-old Japanese man in 1976. Well, there was that sale on rice in 75, and a lot of their moms kind of stocked up and then didn't know what to do with it after the next sale, so they gave it to their sons. He was 155. 155 makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm just a guesstimate, thinking about, especially losing 88 pounds. Like, he couldn't have been like 120 because then he's only 30-something pounds. So I imagine he would be in the 150 range to lose 88 and still be alive. Because, like, there's just no way you can survive. You can survive at 70 to 80 pounds,
There's a lot of things this man's not supposed to survive
True.
that are coming up. Not let alone all of this shit far.
Literally all of this shit.
Because this motherfucker reached that point in pain.
Shitterily.
The right syncopation between coughing and just body compulsions and gasping for air. He was not able to fucking pass out and was just awake for all of the. Most other folks would have passed the fuck out, right? Or if it was any other way, honestly, you would have passed out and just fucking drowned in your own vomit, piss, diarrhea blood.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been it. But no, he stayed awake and was alive, commenting later about how he was kind of fuzzy-headed. Could you imagine how horrible of a headache in the background? Everything about this is like...
It almost sounds like when I eat pineapple.
It's a little like that. It's not quite as bad. It's not quite as bad, but it's pretty close. Well, like I said, it was recorded way when he went into the obstetrician's.
Baby doctor.
Way when he ended up in a hospital the next day. He's like, all right, we're going to have to put like 4 of these scales together, but it should still work. No, but his body was physically pushing every liquid imaginable out of him as fast as possible from anywhere it could. And the nerve pain he was feeling from having become almost literally skin and bones.
Yeah.
Well, when talking about this night, he always brings up how the bed was too painful for his butt, which caused him to jump up. But the other parts would force him to collapse. The other pains and the other reactions would force him to collapse back down on the bed, which would force him back onto the bed, which would force it. And he was just... This is so fucking horrible,
he probably had no
dude.
butt anymore, too. His, like, butt must have been gone, too, because he lost all his weight. Yeah,
No, he straight up didn't.
He lost his butt. He literally lost his ass.
He did.
Yeah.
So, from the little that I could find referenced about this condition, that wasn't directly one of the, I don't know, a bunch of Japanese articles about this dude, right? That's basically it. Like, motherfuckers look like 4,000-year-old preserved mummies.
Yeah.
Before they die. It's real bad, dude.
Yeah.
Well, when he finally got discovered by somebody and was taken by ambulance to an actual hospital, he was diagnosed with superior mesenteric artery duodenal obstruction. That's the only time I'm going to read that. And it's a syndrome which is so rare that at the time, worldwide, there had only ever been 120 cases ever recorded, and it has, at least amongst the 120, 100% fatality rate.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And Kiuchi, around hearing that time of his diagnosis, was also given an estimated 7 days left to live, which honestly, after what he went through, not too bad.
Oh, I mean, 7 days, Yeah.
I would have died in 7 minutes of that. I am like no tolerance.
Everything
for that
gone.
kind of
Like,
shit.
you're pretty much nothing left.
The hint of it almost killed me.
Yeah. He must have gotten that video.
The ring?
Yes. 7 days. The doctor leaves the room and he's like, I think you have 7 days. And he's like, but I actually have to show you this video that it's new. It just came out. You should just watch it.
Somebody's calling. Hello? So from the very little I could find about this syndrome, what happens is there's a specific kind of rupture of an artery in your stomach.
Yeah.
Anybody with an ulcer, I've never had one, but
Ooh, they are horrifying.
I'm going to assume, based off of how I've heard anybody with one speak about it,
Not fun.
that, but multiply it by the length of the largest artery that wraps around your stomach, that's splitting open into your stomach. Well, what then happens is it's almost like the hand of God just kind of puts his arm down your throat and starts trying to pull all of your organs through that slit that's now open to your full-on insides into your stomach and up into your throat and out of you. It's like you're being pulled inside out through your stomach.
I heard that's a new diet fad, actually.
It's the one you're not supposed to try at home, but that's why his coughing and shit at this point was stopped.
Yeah.
Because his organs were literally blocking the bottom of his esophagus. It stopped because his organs clogged it.
Yeah, that's little blessings because he's not coughing now, but in horrifying pain.
That's where all the blood was coming from.
Yeah, I imagine they didn't give him any pain medicine either because they feel he would have probably just died. They probably just let it happen because it would have thinned his blood as well. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
I have no fucking clue. I just know that the bleeding out of his mouth and ass stopped because his organs were in his stomach. The initial part with the abdominal pain. So he went from being like kind of like a slim, like kind of fit, like Air Force and like 22 years old, like that. He was in decent shape,
Yeah.
right? Well, the night that he had collapsed over in pain when he was found, his stomach had distended. Basically, it looks like when somebody takes a balloon and they stick it out of their shirt and they're like, look at me.
Oh.
But it was literally his stomach.
It like blew up. Like when you starve.
Yes. The tear, the ruptured artery or whatever, hadn't split large enough while everything was trying to push into it. So all of his shit in his body was trying to push down, causing his stomach to bellow out like he had a fucking basketball inserted under his skin. Obviously, something's horribly wrong.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Poor guy.
The days passed. His parents sleeping by his side at night and speaking to him all day while they waited, hoping for a change as his body was quite literally still deteriorating in front of everyone. After 7 days, as his body physically rejected any attempt to recover, Kiuchi laid motionless, trapped in an existence of nothing more than a mind in pain. Too weak to sleep, he laid there, listening. The doctor was explaining to his mother and father that there were no measurements left of hope. It was a conversation with nothing new or unexpected, just another complete darkness was around him. There was no transition. He knew he was on all fours, wrist deep in the mud, with the middle of his last thought fleeting as he was straining to see anything besides the color black hugging his eyes. With no reference, he moved through the feeling of crawling on his hands and knees, only now assuming he was even turning his head, moving forward as each step sunk into the cold mud with pitch black screaming in his face. Kiuchi continued, blindly following the sensations of rice paddies below him until he discovered a faint glow, either imagined or real. Deeper into an unknown distance he crept, carefully, towards this vague suggestion. Finally reaching a point where he could see past any doubt the definition of a shape, an opening, gradually forming as he neared. There was a heavy, dull glow saturating the world he found when he finally reached the end, a dim light with no source, like the last moments before the sun sets. There was no color, just an ambiance in black and white. He turned around to see what he had just been crawling through. It was a muddy, cave-like tunnel. He was standing now in a rolling, treeless landscape of grassy hills. The feeling of cool, wet grass between his toes gave relief as he began walking, just moving forward with no sense of time until he eventually came across the glow of a campfire far in the distance. As he approached, he found a black and white river blocking him from reaching the fire. There was a circle of yellowish light in the direction of the campfire, almost like a yellow spotlight illuminating a colorless surrounding. Kiuchi began walking along the riverbank, searching through the thick reeds for anything he could use to cross the slow-flowing waters. Eventually, he found a broken boat with one oar. He threw the boat into the river and climbed on, started paddling with his hands. He did this frantically as much as he could, feeling compelled to keep going towards the campfire, while his boat was being pulled sideways downstream. But while this happened, he noticed the yellow light stayed directly on the other side of the river, like the afterburn of a camera flash when you blink. It was following his sight, but consistently positioned on the opposite bank. After reaching the other side, he collapsed in exhaustion. Lying face first in the grass, trying to catch his breath, when he raised his head, he could see the campfire was only about 50 feet away. There were 4 or 5 silhouettes, shadows, of people warping like heat waves above hot asphalt. One of them began moving towards him, their definition coming into view as they grew closer. It was a middle-aged woman, dressed in the traditional Japanese mourning attire for someone grieving in the days after a funeral. She asked him, "What brings you here?" Kiuchi, clueless as to where here even was, couldn't find words to respond. She soon led him to the campfire, where an old man, a young man, and 2 older women were standing. Kiuchi looked at them. He realized the young man was his cousin, who died in a bulldozer accident years earlier, and the old man was Kiuchi's late uncle, who died a few years later. Immediately, they began chatting, happy to reunite and talk about their relatives, until eventually the same woman that brought him to the fire beckoned for him to follow her. She led him towards a grassy hill, and they casually walked up it until they reached the top. From where they stood, Kiuchi saw a massive field of colorful flowers sloping up to the next hill, and a large golden light shining down from the sky. She led him down the hill and into the flowers, where a ball of golden light descended from the sky, leaving tracers behind it and stopping directly in front of his face. In the light was a woman's face, now looking deeply into his. There was a pause. Then the light left, and Kiuchi continued to follow the older woman as she turned around and started walking back. Looking around as he followed her, he soon realized that the woman had disappeared, leaving a deep panic to sink in. He frantically began walking faster through the flowers, trying to now he was standing in the hospital, looking at himself lying in a bed while doctors and nurses were scrambling, doing everything they could to resuscitate him.
What the fuck?
Shouting to each other over the wailing cries of his father standing in the corner of the room. There was no transition, only 2 moments as he watched the staff attempting to massage his heart and saw nurses quickly passing through him to change positions. It dawned on him that no one could see him standing there behind them while they worked on his body. At that moment, 2 thoughts came to him. He wanted to live, and the fact that he was back must mean he was going to survive. Looking over at his dad, he tried telling him desperately that he'd be okay, telling him not to worry. There was no reaction. He was screaming in his dad's face as he was watching his dad break down and cry. Around that time, he realized that his mother wasn't there. He was now standing behind her outside the hospital's front entrance. She was in a phone booth, struggling to hold her address book still long enough to dial the number to Kiuchi's older brother. He leaned over her shoulder and tried to read the number out for her, but she kept dialing it wrong. Eventually, she got through, crying out, "Kiuchi's dead." To which he replied in her ear, "No, I'm not. I'm not dead, Mom. I'll be okay." She didn't respond. He thought about his sisters and was sitting in the back of a car between two of them, while the other was up front next to his brother-in-law who was driving. They were talking about Kiuchi's funeral, which by now was starting to get on his nerves.
For sure.
Leading him to finally snap, "I'm not dead!" But no one heard him. So he just sat there, frustrated and listening to them go back and forth until it finally clicked. This whole time, he had been teleporting by just thinking of people. So he thought of his hospital room and was back in it, watching the staff still try to save him. But that got old really quick. So at this point, and I'm just going to accommodate this and say this sounds like something he would do after watching like probably 15 hours of his interviews, being slightly annoyed that no one was hearing him and feeling confident that he was on a return flight back from the afterlife. He did what anyone would do. Kind of started fucking with people. For science.
For science. Yeah, for science.
For science. That's how he always frames it. But then what happens is like, did he really? Was that an experiment?
Just being a dick.
No, but I do have to say that, quick heads up, Joey, if I bounce out of my body first, like my bodysuit first, like I'm going to do this to you.
Okay. Well, first off, as soon as that happens, I'm just going to start shit-talking you and just be like, man, what a fucking dick. Which would have been funny if they were just... His brother was just like, God, thank God he's dead. I hate that guy. He's like, what a dick. God, and he's just like, all right, I'm haunting the shit out of this dude first. When I wake up, I'm throwing him in a river.
I'm able to slap him again. No, but so at this moment, he had the thought, wait, nobody is going to believe this shit. Unless I do something to prove it to them later.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so he's back.
For sure, yeah.
During that whole, field and flowers and crossing the river Styx, which is what that was, right? Yeah. There was nobody there to give money to.
Yeah, he didn't have the pennies.
Got the boat. He's like, well, shit, nobody's around. I'm taking this rental.
Yeah.
At that point, meeting his dead family that he knew was dead, it had dawned on him by then that, like, he's like, I'm fucking dead. But the feeling, to think of the release, which is something he always says about, like, that moment. He's like, it was a release. It was a relief. Like, there was no, I'm slowly not feeling better. It was just as quick as, and the script I was trying to emulate was just like, it's there. It's already happening. You're in the middle of it. And that's how feeling better from his state of literally being a mummy that was alive.
Yeah, just being dead.
To now physically able to, like, move.
Yeah.
Let alone crawl through a muddy tunnel for God knows how many miles, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, eventually the faded memory of where he had been was kind of coming back to him, and he was like, oh shit, I might be dead. I might be dead right now, and going through. The lady disappears, and he's standing there staring at his body, and he's like, ah, shit.
Yeah. Well, I do want to ask you before we get back into it, just to kind of...
Yeah, please.
Well, why can cutlery teleport and not time travel? Well, it's silverware, not silver win. Come on, Gil, get with it.
Now, like I said, so he had the realization, or was starting to come to the realization, like, wait a second, all this imagery sounds a little familiar. Oh, yeah, that's my dead cousin. Oh, it's my dead uncle. I don't know who that lady is, whatever. He's starting to realize, and he came back, saw his body, like, being resuscitated, and he's like, wait a second, okay, hold on. if I'm back here and I'm looking at this after I just went to the place you're supposed to go when you die, that must mean that I'm on my way back.
Yeah.
Why the fuck else would I be here right now?
He took the train to downtown.
Which is very logical. Like, it's like, yeah, that totally tracks, actually. So he's at first kind of feeling sad for, like, family and the way they're reacting and trying to reassure them. But then, you can only hear that, like, you're dead so many times if you're like, I'm not fucking dead. Everybody stop freaking out. You know, like, dude, give it like 10 minutes. I'll be right there. I'll be right back. All right, I'll be right back. I'm just going to the gas station for some milk.
I'll be right back. The reason why he got resuscitated is because they brought in the baby doctor from the other hospital, and that baby doctor came and was just like, get out of my way.
You guys can never finish anything here in Tokyo.
Yep.
So yeah, at this point, he's just kind of being like, holy fuck, this is nuts, right? Fully conscious, fully present, partially feeling reality. He can hear shit, but he's realizing that, nobody's fucking responding when he's yelling or anything like that. And it doesn't seem like he can, like, pick shit up.
Yeah.
Which is something I've always wondered. How come ghosts can walk on floors, but they don't fall through them?
It's an interesting conundrum there.
I'm just saying. Well, with this conundrum of, basically nobody's going to believe this shit unless I can figure out a way that when I come back, which it seems like I'm gonna, I can prove it to him that this actually fucking happened.
Yeah.
/ at the same time, he had been an atheist his whole life. And he was just kind of like going through all this shit at the same time. And he's like, I don't know how much of this is chemically induced hallucinations in my brain.
Chemicals in your brain kind of making it work, yeah.
He had a lot of time to think while he was sitting there staring at people trying to bring him back alive, or like get his heart to start and shit again.
I mean, it was probably very short time, to be fair, because a lot of times you get 3 minutes, probably 3, 4, 7 minutes, I think, because it's something with the brain dies after a while.
I think it's after 3 to 5 minutes is like
brain death completely.
There's like an almost impossible chance that you don't have severe brain damage or like the start. So I had to look up when a body dies and all this other shit.
You're now Dr. Gill.
So basically carbon monoxide starts building up in your brain. I think. Point is, oxygen getting reintroduced to your brain after your lungs have stopped and your circulation's like stopped. The oxygen itself is toxic to your brain and causes brain damage.
Makes sense.
All the systems that kind of keep us going in one direction, when they're put into reverse, do the exact opposite and decompose us really fucking fast.
Bodies are funny.
Like all of the shit in our bodies and everything that it does, like pretty much completely is like, and now I'm the evil version. And they just go in and start doing all the opposites. They're like, yeah, it's opposite day,
Yeah, finally, we can wear that mismatched shirt.
Oxygen becomes toxic. Your lungs should not be breathing. If your heart starts, you're going to go brain dead. Everything gets wonky dookie. Well,
it's a medical term.
Like I said, what the fuck do I do? Bingo. I'm going to fuck with my friends. Well, Kiuchi thought what would be an undeniable thing that he could bring up later when he comes back and sees folks, and quickly settled on messing with his friends who were 4 hours away, still living in his old hometown. Thought of one of them and was now standing in the office of the local gas station that he owned. His old friend group just sitting around, shooting the shit, laughing in this office. As he stood there listening for a little bit and kind of like laughing with them and coming back to life and seeing his old friends, even though they couldn't see him, it sunk back in eventually. Nobody can fucking see me or hear me, which sounds obvious, but I'm going to be on. It probably takes a minute to get used to that.
Probably,
you know?
Yeah.
Well, he looked out of the office window and noticed a line of cars waiting at a red light. And this gas station, pretty much the office window and the door from the office are sidewalk and then the street.
Yeah, not far.
He looked out the office window and noticed a line of cars waiting at a red light. Realizing he's not in his own body, he started to wonder if he could get inside of someone else's. So he climbed into one of his friends.
Creepy. A little creepy, but okay. Yeah.
Wonder if there's room for two. Like, I don't know.
He just whispers, I'm inside you, to his friend. Oh.
Well, He then started trying to think as loud as possible, basically, which was about as loud as his voice to everybody else. He started trying to concentrate, right? With like the goal of, now that I'm literally in someone's body, can I convince the person I'm in that actually I'm driving by in one of those cars outside?
It's an interesting way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he started trying to convince the person he was inside of that he, Kiuchi, was the driver of one of the cars sitting at the red light. The friend he was possessing interrupted everyone talking and pointed to the car, telling everyone, "Hey, it's Kiuchi! Look outside! It's Kiuchi!" All stoked to see him because they hadn't seen him in forever.
That's ridiculous.
At that point, they all looked at the car, sitting probably like 10, 15 feet away, and started waving at the driver before they piled outside and began enthusiastically yelling and running towards the now horrified driver.
Damn.
Who in the last second narrowly missed having his car fully surrounded by them when the longest red light of his life finally turned green and he peeled out. At that point, all Kiuchi's friends were confused and just shouting fucking obscenities at this person who was driving away.
Yeah, pissed off because they thought it was their friend. Is like, God, now those are the people that are just like, God, Kiuchi's a dick. Won't even stop and say hi to. He's too good for us. He's Big City now. That's what his nickname's gonna be. Big City Kiuchi from now on.
Well, we'll follow up on that a little bit later, but for now, it's important to note that while Kiuchi was watching all of this and probably laughing his ass off,
Yeah, he
right?
definitely. Oh, he was.
Like,
I would.
You're fucking with your old bros from your hometown, and you're like, bro, you guys are, you guys are doubly not gonna believe it when I tell you this one. You know, like,
idiots.
I possessed Craig, and I fucking knew Craig would be easy, and they'd be like, yeah, he would be. You know, everything's cool, but yeah. So he's probably laughing his ass off because here's the thing: during all this, he noticed that everyone, not just the person he possessed, had gotten really close to the car and still thought the driver, who looked nothing like him, was Kiuchi.
That's weird. Yeah, I was thinking about that.
If this is the kind of shit spirits can do, it kind of explains why groups of people can swear up and down they saw something, but nothing is caught on camera. Just
Yeah, for sure.
throwing that out there as a thought.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, ugh.
Well, after carefully conducting the scientific experiment on and inside of his friends and a random pedestrian, he started wondering what else he could do. If he could move through space so easily, maybe he could move through time. That's right, Joey. It's time travel time, baby.
Hell yeah.
Woo! Hell yeah. And hell then too. So, soon after the thought of moving through time occurred to him, he remembered something that had been bugging him his entire life. It was a moment from when he was 6, and quote, "The moment I remembered that and thought about it, I was suddenly there. And there were my sister and I, as kids in front of me, or rather quite far below," end quote. He stood on the edge of an overhanging slope, watching himself and his sister walking along and climbing over the large wet rocks in the river. They were almost to the exact point that always stuck out to him. Quote, "I heard a voice saying, 'Watch out!' And I turned to look. But there was no one on that side of the slope," end quote. But as an adult, knowing what was about to happen became too overwhelming. He panicked. As they got closer to his childhood memory, and then he yelled, quote, "Watch out!" At the moment, he remembered hearing when he was 6, right before, quote, "a rock suddenly appeared and I pushed my sister," end quote. It's a time paradox. He had gone back in time and saved his sister from dying, but because he had already done that, he was remembering it only as a confusing moment when he had saved her.
It is a time paradox.
Yes, because that means some other shit happened, and then when he died in the future and was thinking about, at some point, it was that version of Kiuchi was like, wait a fucking second, maybe I can go back in time. Man, I wonder what life would have been like with my sister, or like, I wish I could have saved her, or I should have, like...
Yeah, but that never
so
happened.
he went back.
But that never happened in his life.
Not in his timeline, in his multiverse.
And so in another timeline, he couldn't time travel.
In the other timeline, he could time travel, but that Kiuchi, there's an infinite number. It just hadn't worked out that way, and some of the branches are closer than others.
It's the Kiuchi cinematic universe. Yeah, Kiuchi cinematic universe, yes, which we have.
Well,
it's his first instance of time travel, I guess, in a way. So this is his first little dabble. Besides just playing around with his friends, he's like messing with his friends. Now he's like, he dipped his toe in. He's like, I did something really crazy that I didn't even understand what I did.
Well, when he realized it was him all along, he obviously had a lot of thinking to do. One of the later conclusions he came to, which we'll kind of maybe expand upon a little bit in part 2, is that guardian angels are really just ourselves from the future coming back to help us.
I think that is not such a crazy idea. I mean, granted, the idea of time travel is very interesting, but that's not such a bad, crazy idea, because you watch movies, and movies aren't always truthful stuff.
Most of the time.
Well, a lot of it has time paradoxes and stuff like that. And I always think of time paradoxes as weird, because the idea, I believe in the idea that time is still almost linear in a way that if you go back and change something, you are still in that timeline. You're not going to leave that. That's going to be your timeline even if you go forward. So whatever happens in that timeline, you're going to be in that timeline.
Interesting. Well, we ain't done yet. In fact, Joey, do you know what it is? Time travel time, baby.
Hell yeah.
Woo! Soon after the riddle of that moment came to be realized, quote, then I wondered about the future. And I suddenly went to the future. There I was in a large tatami room, a middle-aged 40-year-old man talking about the importance of the earth to a group of people, end quote. He'd gone on to explain the clothes he was wearing, the details of the room, yada, yada, yada. But we'll maybe come around to that when we have to get to it. Right now, what stood out the most to him was not only that he was still alive in his 40s. Again, remember the condition he left?
He almost got pulled down the well and was almost dead.
In realizing he's not just going to survive, but do well in life, it started to get to him. He started to think about how his self in his actual present state. And Joey, do you know what that means?
He's gonna fix himself?
It's time travel time, baby.
Of course.
Now he's standing in the hospital room. The doctors were gone.
Oh, okay.
And only his aunt was there.
Loyal aunt? Yeah.
Every other time he was popping back, chaos in the room.
Yeah.
But now it's just his aunt. His dad's not there, his mom's not there, nobody's there. She was quietly praying next to his now pale, dead body. Seeing this, he decided to climb back inside and was immediately struck with intense pain before losing consciousness. As he later came back to his weakened state, his eyes were already partially opened. He could see his aunt slowly bringing a spoon filled with rice water up to his mouth, which he gently poured it in. Just ever so fragilely said, quote, yummy. At which point, his aunt fucking screamed. Quick side note here, in the Shinto faith, quote, immediately after death, relatives moisten the deceased person's lips with water, a practice known as matsugo no mizu, which means water of the last moment, end quote, She was in the middle of performing last rites over his dead body.
And he's like, yum.
And
More.
and he just like was like, yummy. And she's like, what the fuck? Everybody was out of the room except for her because she was performing
The last rites,
for
yeah. Good God. And he's just like, fuck that.
And he's like, I love rites.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite.
So like, I don't care how committed you are to the faith. At that fucking point, you're just like, Jesus Christ! You know,
Yeah.
like,
Just flips
what
the bowl
fuck?
out of her hands,
Imagine
probably.
that's horrifying.
Uh-huh.
You were in the room with a dead body, and it starts talking to you.
Zombie apocalypse. You're either that or you're going crazy.
Well, she started yelling, quote, Tsuruhiko's come alive again, end quote. And at this point, already running to the room since her first blood-curdling scream, the staff was now rushing in and seeing that he was fucking alive.
Oh, my God.
To say they were amazed would be an understatement.
For sure.
Because among the shocked staff who had piled into the room at this point and were seeing Kiuchi alive and breathing was the pulmonologist who had recorded his lungs as having stopped. The neurologist who saw that Kiuchi's brain was dead.
Yeah.
And the lead doctor who, after confirming that he had no pulse, declared him deceased 30 minutes earlier.
Damn. Yeah, that's dead.
Kiuchi had been officially registered as dead for a full 30 minutes before he came back to life. And to this day, he's still the only one in Japan's history to have ever been declared deceased in a hospital and then resuscitated.
Damn.
And after he came back to life, the staff refused, and like, so much credit to them, the staff refused to let him die again. They
Good.
immediately grabbed his ass and began performing what would go on to become 10 hours of non-stop emergency surgery that not only stabilized Kiuchi, but also successfully treated the very thing that had killed him.
Damn.
Making Kiuchi the only person to have ever survived this incredibly rare syndrome. And when they finally finished, they had to pull all of his organs out of his stomach and recombobulate them and fix all that shit and sew his ass back up. After his body had, blood was starting to fucking go. His body was like in like not quite to the first real stages of, decomposing, but it was getting splotches were showing.
Yeah.
They're working on a fucking cadaver, and they had no clue at that point that they were like, oh my God, medical school was very accurate to what I would need to do later in life.
Yeah.
But they fucking did it. Because I think at that point,
it's a miracle of some sort. We got to save him.
We know he's going to die in literally 5 minutes if we don't go as hard fucking core as we can.
Yep. If I woke up in the hospital and they, the person's like, no, you're brain dead. I'd do a little gun point at him, wink at the doctor and be like, I'm not brain dead.
Guns.
I'm just dumb. Time of death now. And they just choke me. Put him out of his misery.
Well, Kiuchi's the only person in history to survive. I still want to argue that syndrome has a 100% kill rate, because technically it killed him one time.
For 30 minutes, yeah, he died.
And when they finished, Kiuchi started talking, telling the exhausted staff, which had been there since the point of him first going into cardiac arrest and needing to be resuscitated, and the long process that they tried to go through to him being dead, and then probably just like smoking a cigarette, being like, fuck, god damn it.
Yeah.
And then hearing the blood-curdling scream of his aunt, running back in and seeing this motherfucker alive.
Yeah.
Being like, holy shit. Then 10 hours. They had a day.
Yeah.
Not quite as bad as being, air traffic control, but
I was about to say, yeah.
And so as they were sitting there, post-up, literally in shock, Kiuchi started talking and started telling everybody what he had just seen, where he went, and what he did. And in the front row seats were the doctors who knew he had died. They were glued to their seats, absolutely mesmerized by everything he had to say, because they knew for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, they had just seen a ghost become human. Next week, the timeline changes, but the outcomes will be the same as Kiuchi recovers. The world reacts, and he dies 2 more times. If you liked this episode, we'd really sincerely appreciate it, though, if you shared it with a friend. Coming slightly late next week, the script's going to be different, and I think that y'all are going to like it. And like I told you at the beginning, it's going to replicate the experience of time travel. We love you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And for the most part, his childhood was average. And honestly, his home life seemed healthy. Typical person, right? Well, his home life was healthy. I don't know if that's typical, but you know, and for the sake of the story.
For our episodes.
Well, by the time he reaches...
It's very healthy.
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah.
Well, we've never dealt with time travelers before. We don't know if this is normal or
Maybe.
Maybe all time travelers actually have a healthy childhood, and that's the difference.
That's how they
between
become
a serial
time
killer
travelers.
and a time traveler.
That's how they become it. Maybe they go back and fix it.
You know what? I'm not going to let 3-year-old me butcher that cow while a pig in the background is screwing a fence post.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I don't know if that was good for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to learn from that.
As he takes off his Richard Nixon mask and his...
Puts away his pocket knife he's about to shank the person with.
But it's a prop pocket knife that actually doesn't shank anybody, and he just does that. They look down, they're like, "Oh God!" And they're like, "Wait a second!" And then he actually comes in, or no, he just pulls out a gun and shoots them. He's like, "Boom!"
He just appears
like,
with the
God,
gun.
Something really fucked me up in my childhood.
He appears with the gun. Damn, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
The other version of the time travel him comes back and shoots the guy, and they just high five.
That one needed to die.